Hey, I'm Adam,
I'm Dave.
and this is Fiction.
Or nonfiction.
Cue music.
Fiction or nonfiction.
Hey, so this is the program where we go through viral news stories, tall tales, urban legends, and determine if they are true or false, if they happen to be fiction or...
Unfiction. Oh, nonfiction.
Yes, thank you. And Dave, this is a particularly interesting episode because this is our second part of a two-parter.
So it's like those sitcoms where it's like, you got to tune in to the next one. Is this the next one?
We are the next one. We are the second episode. And hopefully we do not follow the trend of those where the second episode was always worse. No, we are going to be the better second episode. Maybe. Just maybe. Dave, I'm sure you remember from last time what we were talking about. Why don't you tell our audience what we are going to be discussing today?
We're talking about Texas Road and some of the ghost stories that have come through there. We had Erica as a special guest last time. Thanks, Erica, again for being on the show. But also, we were just talking a bit about the area of Texas Road and just how, in general, there's an eeriness to it.
Mm-hmm. And if anyone has not had a chance to go there, it is a long stretch of road, very dark. It has a lot of wooded areas around it until it ends in a farmland area and also a cemetery. So definitely some good setting for spooky shenanigans to happen. But there's been a lot of tales of ghostly hauntings dating back to the 19th century. And as we said in our last episode, we're not going to try to talk about are ghosts real or not. But what we are going to do is explore the origin of a haunting, and from that determine if that origin story happens to be true or not.
Okay.
We're not actually at Texas Road, although we both have had personal experiences visiting that site.
Yeah, we've both been there at one point in our lives, and I think most people in Windsor, Essex, and probably Amherstburg as well, because it's closer to Amherstburg than here, have been there and have heard these tales and have experienced some sort of Texas Road eeriness in their lifetime.
Mm-hmm. I know I've had some Texas Road eeriness visiting there, probably very much against the wishes of the residents in that area. And I know I'm making a little bit of light of this, but this has been an ongoing issue, and I do want to address this, that a certain part of that property is private property. You should not be trespassing there. It doesn't matter how much fun you think you're going to have ghost hunting or traveling around. Please respect boundaries and please respect private property. With that said, Dave, before I get into the story, I have a random Adam question for you.
How dare you? Okay, go ahead.
When do you believe was the first recorded sighting of a supernatural event at Texas Road?
Well, you mean recorded. Okay, because on the last episode you said tales go back to the 1800s.
So, with that said, I'm going to give you something you love.
What?
Multiple choice.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's do it. Multiple choice.
Okay, so was the first recorded occurrence of a supernatural event at Texas Road recorded in 1850,
Okay.
1869, or 1879?
I'm going to say 1879.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner. Okay, so do you want to hear about this?
Oh, I guess so. Yeah.
Okay, so I have a quote, and this is taken from the October 17th, 1879 edition of the Amherstburg Echo. And I quote, "The old sawmill on the riverfront has been this week the scene of considerable excitement on account of spirits and ghosts. For several nights, lights were seen in the mill, and the sounds of chains, hammers, etc. could be distinctly heard." So, when people investigated that, Dave, what do you think they found?
Just chains on the floor?
Do you want the answer?
No. No, yes, please tell us.
Okay. Continuing my quote. When the ghosts were discovered, it was found that a large pile of sawdust under the mill, which had become crusted over, had been dug out, and several boys with a lantern and some chains had been the cause of the scare, as they always hid in the sawdust when anyone came near it. It was some time before they were discovered. even when a thorough search was made.
So you're telling me that pranks existed in 1879? And kids would hide in sawdust? That seems so healthy.
Well, they didn't have TikTok back then.
Oh, yeah, okay. They just had sawdust. That's interesting. So I guess pranks and, ghost stories, they go together.
This goes to my belief. And again, I think we can discount individual cases of sightings, maybe individual tales of haunting. But even the oldest recorded supernatural occurrence has been proven to be a hoax. And I do believe, if not all, the vast majority of these so-called sightings at Texas Road have either been hoaxes or people wanting to see something.
Okay.
So with that said, I'm going to tell you another story.
Oh, we're not done?
No, we're not done.
Because I want to leave. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Get out. No, Dave, no, don't leave me alone. It's scary. No, I'm going to tell you another ghost story. So last time we talked about a headless woman. So today our story involves a headless man, but just not any man.
It's a horseman?
It's a horseman.
It's a horseman? Half horse, half man? With no head?
Well, wouldn't that just be a headless horse? I don't know. Which half is the horse? Which half is the man?
This is too complicated for this episode. Let's continue with your
story.
story.
It's a horse man. It's just a man who rides a horse. Okay.
Okay. A horseman.
Okay, that was the first mystery solved. Okay. Now, getting into the legend. It has been said a man's mangled body was left in a ditch on Texas Road back in 1881.
Okay.
Near the present-day Verdi Club. No one knows exactly what happened to him, but legend has it the spirit of this man cannot leave its burial site and now haunts the road and its travelers. The gallop of horses in the dead of night, as well as the crack of a whip of the headless horseman, has been heard by many. So we have a story of a headless horseman. Individually, we could get into specific sightings and try to discredit it or see if there's some validity to it, but let's talk about the origin of this myth, about this body left in the ditch back in 1881.
Okay.
What do you think? Fiction or non-fiction?
Well, I do think that could have happened to a person, especially during that time period. Someone could have been left in a ditch and something like that could have happened. I guess that could happen anytime. So I'm saying, I'm going to say it's based partly in truth. That's all I'm going to say.
So at this point, before I reveal anything else I've uncovered, what would be your first step in investigating this story?
Well, like we talked about last time, kind of go back to maybe some newspaper stories, some archives. Try to find if there's any documented evidence of an accident taking place similar to this during that time period. Now, you said the Amherstburg Echo. This is from the Amherstburg Echo.
No, this is not. Actually, this is just a purported legend.
Okay.
And this is one of those things that has been passed on word of mouth. It's been in different legends books. In fact, I think if you actually want a printed record of this legend, I referenced this book on the last episode, Mysteries of Ontario by John Robert Colombo. And I'm quoting from him, an incident that occurred near what now stands the Verdi Club.
Okay.
A rider was murdered and his body mangled. The man's spirit returns and rides the road as a headless horseman. Now again, Colombo is just quoting the legend or the myth. He's not actually saying this happened, but that's the recorded instance. If you want proof that this is a legend that's passed around Amherstburg and Texas Road, you have your print proof there. But you're saying that we need to go to newspaper records.
Well, I guess that's proof that there was a story of it, not proof that maybe like death certificates, anything like that. If we could find out the name of this person.
Yeah, and that's the thing we need to uncover. Now, the legend goes that no one really knows what happened or who this man was, which makes part of unearthing it very difficult. Before I get into some of the results of my research, let's talk about headless ghost, because they're all over the place, apparently. I mean, Texas Road already has 2 occurrences of headless ghosts that have been passed around, the headless woman that we talked about last episode, and now we have a headless horseman. And that sounds awfully familiar.
Yeah, this story seems to be combining. I referenced last week the famous story of the headless horseman, which is a fictitious story that was written a long time ago.
In Washington Irving.
Yeah.
So when was that story published? I see you have your computer.
Oh, I don't know.
You should look it up on your computer.
Well, what I'm trying to look up is something else. But okay, there is, just to let you know, there is a Facebook group for people that want to know about Texas Road stories. And it's called Stories of Texas Road, Amherstburg, Ontario, Canada. It has 4.2 thousand members, and they post stories and they discuss things that have happened on Texas Road. It's more like an online forum, but it is a group, and that's a lot of people.
That is a lot of people. Now, when we do talk about verifying information, we make sure we're getting it through reputable sources. Do you think this would be a reputable source?
This is more just like a discussion group where people just talk. It's not necessarily, although sometimes they do post references. Like I was trying to find when Texas Road was named Texas Road, and there's a lot of information, and there are some resources on that. That's a bit different. That's like factual, like when was this street made? When did it become a thing? But yeah, it's more of a discussion. So what you're telling me is someone just posts something randomly on Facebook. It's not true.
Possibly.
We
There's
don't
no
know.
way to really verify that unless
Okay.
they do leave a link to some other website or reference to where they got the information from. One thing I am wondering, though, because you brought up this is so similar to The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, that famous story. When was that story originally published?
Here's what's odd. I just typed up The Headless Horseman, and there's a novel by Mayne Reid. It was serialized in 1865 and 66, and it's called The Headless Horseman, or A Strange Tale of Texas.
Interesting. So I think right there we might have a connection where we see why there might be so many headless horseman stories here or so many headless ghost stories on Texas Road, because just by the name of that story, we actually have a connection.
Now, what's interesting about that is you were asking about the famous story with Ichabod Crane, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, by Washington Irving. So that story was first published in 1820.
Ooh.
That's a long time ago.
He was a very popular author. Everyone was reading him in the colonies when he was published. In fact, a lot of his works would be anthologized. So I don't think it's a far stretch to say a lot of the purported sightings are influenced by people reading these stories.
We're getting so sidetracked.
So sidetracked. Well, let's get back on the track, back onto the track of Texas Road, and let's talk about what I uncovered through my research. So, Dave, as per your intuition, yes, I definitely consulted some old newspaper archives, and going around this era, the Amherstburg Echo would have been in publication.
Okay.
So I'm going by the date they gave me, 1881, but I gave a little bit of leeway because I realize the way legends go, sometimes the dates aren't really reliable. So this may have been in 1881. It could have been in 1861. Who
Right.
knows? So I gave myself a pretty wide breadth. But in my research, I found no reports of bodies discovered in the area within the time frame of the legend. The closest account I could come up with is that of a gas station employee who was murdered and whose body was discovered around that site in 1979.
It's a little bit far off. From that, too.
1979 is a bit off, so I wasn't able to find any information from the newspaper archives. A little bit of a roadblock. If you were in my shoes and you're performing this investigation, what would you do?
Try and consult maybe another resource or a different person that might be able to assist you. Like maybe you could reach out to another librarian.
Or a different information organization.
No. Yes.
No? Which is it?
Both.
Okay. What? Okay. Well, I did. I actually approached someone who I talked to before for our last haunting tale from Amherstburg. I contacted the Marsh Historical Collection in Amherstburg. And they consulted all of the reference materials and various historical documents. And I quote here from the email I received back: "No murders similar in type and location to this one are recorded."
Okay.
So according to them, no recorded instances of a murder or a body found like this. My question to you is, how do you think these rumors got started?
Well, they're just, I guess they could be kind of like folk tales to scare people. And a combination of that with people going there and saying what they've heard and then rumors spreading.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think there is truth to what you said. We were talking about how these stories pass on, even just in popular culture, like the legend of Sleepy Hollow or the Headless Horseman. So these stories do become part of the popular mythology and I think are applied. There was a CBC article, actually, that dealt with the rumors of hauntings and ghostly apparitions of Texas Road, referencing how they go back to colonial times. And we have to remember, this was a period of time of extreme paranoia and fear because colonists were inhabiting a new continent. They were very wary of the environment they were in. Their food supply was precarious. Their housing was precarious. They were facing life and death on a day-to-day basis. So this is one of those situations where maybe their fear manifested in these stories. Tales of ghosts and hauntings reflect the uncertainty and fear a new environment could pose to these colonists, and ghost stories certainly seem to be a manifestation of these fears.
Yeah, that definitely is a factor. So yeah, I guess we have our answer.
I have one more thing to add to this, and it's about purported sightings.
Okay.
And when I say purported, I mean people who claim they see something. They don't know what, but it's something they can't explain. Or maybe even people who are skeptics and they see something.
Well, we're not here to prove whether ghosts are real or not. We're here to prove if this is a true story of this guy where this happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Some people can see some pretty scary things sometimes.
And also, I think people can hear some things, maybe in the dead of night. The croak of a frog sounds like a crack of a whip. Maybe, a firefly resembles a horse's lantern or a carriage's lantern.
It's gonna be a big firefly.
Oh, maybe it's a couple fireflies. Who knows?
Maybe two.
Maybe two. Two big boys. It could even be this. Pareidolia. Do you know what that is?
I don't know.
How do you not know? Okay, so this is a theory. And keep in mind, this is only a theory. But as for the numerous reports about spectral sightings in the area, these could be a mix of sensory information and the power of suggestion. So the brain sometimes finds meaning in meaningless things. That's what that word I said means. Pareidolia basically is your brain filling in gaps of information to make sense of something. So this is a phenomenon that occurs, I think we've all encountered this, when you stare at clouds and you see shapes of things like rabbits. Or you gaze at a piece of wood grain and you see a face or an image in it.
Are you telling me when I look at clouds, they don't actually look like things?
Sorry, Dave.
Please don't tell me that.
I'm shattering your worldview.
So you're telling me that cloud that looked like...
No, it was not Blossom. It just looked like it was wearing Blossom's hat.
I can live with that.
Well, the brain also does top-down processing, so it adds information to your perception of the world. So most of the time, there's way too much stuff coming in for your brain, for your senses to make sense of. So paying attention to all of it would overwhelm you. So the brain picks out the most important parts and registers that. So basically, this theory is used a lot to talk about ghost sightings, paranormal sightings, and to try to rationalize it. Basically saying that the influence of people hearing that a place is haunted, the brain interprets stimuli encountered on a road, such as a passing tree or a rock formation that you happen to drive by, as a ghostly figure.
You're getting all scientific here.
I'm getting very scientific. So, again, this is not to discredit anyone who may feel they've seen something on Texas Road. You know what? I'm not saying that you're lying, and I'm not saying that you're wrong. You certainly saw something, but all I'm saying is there's a possibility it could be anything else rather than a ghost. It could have been a group of trees, a bush, a rock formation, maybe even a deer that was running away. Your brain's trying to process it because it's a flash of information, and you're familiar with ghost stories at Texas Road. Even if you're not a believer, your brain remembers that and poof, your brain processes it as a ghost.
So what you're saying is the truth is out there, but not on this story.
Not in this story, no. Now, I will say from all the evidence we have about the Headless Horseman story, there's no evidence to show that there was a mangled body there. So the origin of this ghost story is obviously fiction. With that said, for the sightings, I think there are plenty of rational explanations to say what people actually saw. But with that said, is Texas Road actually haunted? I don't think we can answer that definitively. However, for these two popular explanations of why Texas Road is haunted, I think we can clearly say that these stories are
Fiction.
fiction.
You're telling me that they're fiction.
They're fiction. They're made up. Well, Dave, this has been a great season. We've talked about so much. We've talked about music. We've talked about food, a lot of food. We've talked about goat suckers and ghost. And we're
Haunted
all
sandwiches.
haunted sandwiches. And we're just about done. You know, we're going to be back for another season, hopefully, next year. Just to make sure that we would like you to continue listening. We have an archive of the episodes. You just need to go to the windsorpubliclibrary.com. And for your research needs, also make sure to go to our website or give us a call at 519-255-6770. Dave, before we get going on the season finale, do we have a final Random Dave fact?
This is from that Facebook group I was mentioning, so take this with a grain of salt. But
Okay.
they are referencing a book from 1985. It was a very small print book called At the End of the Trail, and it was by David P. Botsford. And this is a collection of anecdotal histories relating to the districts surrounding the Canadian end of the Great Salt Trail in the general Windsor-Essex-Amherstburg area. Now, there are references here, and you were referencing the sawmill earlier.
Mm-hmm.
A small settlement sprang up around the sawmill, and it was known as Hell's Corner. Texas Road is at Fourth Concession. From the type of social life that was emanating near a tavern that was located there, that's why they called it this.
It was a rowdy place.
Yeah, and then the Cottage Tavern added the name Texas to its local nomenclature from a number of shootings that occurred there. But the name Texas was also used as a pen name by Dallas Norville, who lived in the vicinity and wrote nature sketches for the Detroit Free Press. Now, the wharf in front of his place was a regular stopping place for early Detroit River steamers, and it was too also known as Texas. That's pretty interesting if that's true, but I'm not 100% sure on it.
Well, I will say I can verify that book exists because when I was doing my research through the Marsh Historical Society, one of the references they gave was actually to that exact book.
Yeah, apparently they only pressed 500 copies, and that's the 85, so that's not too many, considering it's a book about, tales from the region here. And it goes into way more detail than just that of Texas Road. It's about the settlement, why things were named, what they were named, but there's been more books since then, obviously, that reference those sort of things. But that's something specific about Texas Road that I was able to find.
Perfect. Well, Dave, I don't know about you, but I feel a little bit safer driving around Texas Road, so maybe in our off season I'll be going there for a vacation. Or not. Who knows?
Maybe not.
Maybe not. Well, Dave, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for sitting in with me, unpacking these stories, these tall tales, these legends, and finding out the truth behind them. Until next season, this has been Adam.
I'm Dave.
And this has been Fiction.
Or nonfiction.